Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another episode of what is the Arsenal News Show. Joining you every morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Good morning. Hope you're doing good. Hope you are doing well. Thank you so much, as always, for making this a key part of your morning routines. You get your breakfast, your orange juice. I suppose orange juice is probably like the most common drink for breakfast. Oh, some of you are going to come in with some really weird shouts, I can just tell in the chat box. But good morning, everybody joining us in today's chat box. Johnny, Blackshine, Jashar, Martin, Peeny Ween, Keems, Afsar, Steve, Morgie, Temi, NSW, Paul. I'm going to have a scroll up on the YouTube app as well, just to make sure that, yes, indeed, StreamYard has mugged people off. Penny Wayne, Marcus, Matt G, Alpha Dan, Anthony, Chips and Peas. Good morning, guys. Thank you so much, as always, for joining us. And yes, let's get into today's big stories, because we've got some big news to discuss today. First of all, over on YouTube, you can listen to my chat with Dan Potts, listening and talking all about kind of the recent bad run of form and whether or not we feel as though we're kind of out of that with the win against Aston Villa. We did some catch up on, because we haven't spoken to Dan for a while, so we did a catch up on the transfer window. And we looked deeper at those games, the Man City disappointment, and looks ahead to what will hopefully be a really positive end to the league season as well. So if you haven't yet given that show a watch, it's the last upload on the YouTube channel. So make sure you go and check that one out. Fantastic news last night was Arsenal's under-18s left it late, scoring in the 92nd minute to beat Cambridge United 3-2 to make the FA Youth Cup semi-final. I really look forward to seeing what this team can do in the semis. It was close, I tell you. I wasn't expecting it to be such a close game. Maybe I was underestimating Cambridge United's under-18s, but if you've not seen the third guy in particular, watch out for Lino Souza's cross for what is just a brilliant goal from Rosiak in the end, off both posts as well. So certainly, if you are in a position to be able to go back and watch the highlights, which they should post them on the Arsenal YouTube channel and on the website at some stage, make sure you catch up, because it was certainly worth watching. There you go. Jack Wilshere, of course, was the man in charge of that team. And it's fair to say that the achievement this season of Arsenal's under-18, when the season started off, it really didn't look like it was going to be a successful season, because we started off with a number of defeats. But since then, Arsenal have really tried to turn things around as much as feasibly possible. And yes, it's not been perfect. Yes, we certainly need to improve on things, but I think the way in which we're performing has been much better. We play in the current South Division of the Premier League, and so we find ourselves currently sixth in the table. Yes, we're quite significantly off the pace being set by West Ham United, who have won 13 of their 15 games. To put that into context, second place Fulham have only won 7 of their 15 games. West Ham's under-18s having a very good season in the second tier, rather in the South tier, and then the North tier, Manchester City running away as you'd expect in that end of things. But Arsenal sitting in sixth, they are quite a significant pace off the top 5, still 6 points away from, annoyingly, Tottenham, Chelsea, Palace, Fulham. But Jack Wilshere has certainly been able to change the form around. And you have to remember that the under-18s is a really difficult side to manage, because you're never certain of what group of players you've got available to you, because often players are going up to play in the under-21s. Some players are going away on loan. Some players just not available for injury purposes. It's arguably a harder group to manage than the under-21s is. And the team that played last night included plenty of the under-21s that are still eligible. Nwaneri, Koja Dubry, Rule Waters, Lino Souza, players that often play with the under-21s or came down to play with the under-18s for the tournament. It's really difficult to manage that situation, because you never know what your best team is going to be that's going to be available. You never know who's going to be there for you. And so I think Wilshere is doing a very good job indeed with this group and with the group of players that he continues to be using. Now, the Europa League last 16 draw will take place today at midday UK time in Nyon, Switzerland. You'll be able to watch that on the UEFA website. I'll also be doing a live blog coverage of this over on football.london, so you'll be able to follow the draw if you can't watch it on football.london's live blog. So I'll be running that a little bit later on today. But last night, Manchester United beat Barcelona 2-1 to knock them out of the competition, which means that the potential opponents for Arsenal, Real Betis, Fenerbahce, Ferencvaros, Feyenoord, Freiburg, Juventus and Bayer Leverkusen. I believe, to be fair, that Arsenal can only face the teams that have progressed through to the next round through the playoffs. So as far as I'm aware, those teams that Arsenal can face are Juventus, Bayer Leverkusen, Sevilla, Union Berlin, Roma, Sporting Lisbon, and Shakhtar Donetsk. I'm pretty sure and Manchester United, of course. I believe the other teams can't face Arsenal because they all won their groups, and teams that won their groups cannot be playing each other. They're all seeded. The teams that went through last night, as I've just run through the teams there, they're the ones that, of course, Arsenal end up playing. But it's a really interesting night in particular by Leverkusen. Fantastic game if you weren't able to watch their clash with Monaco. I really like Monaco. We're going to go through based on the first leg, and then Bayer Leverkusen did a smash and grab away from home to get themselves through. Sevilla nearly blew it against PSV. They won 3-0 in the home leg, lost 2-0 to PSV in the away leg. Union Berlin knocked out Ajax to progress to the next round as well. They're going to be no mugs to face at all. People are describing them as the Real Madrid of the Europa League. Don't play particularly well, but always win. And Shakhtar, of course, are a team that Arsenal have plenty of narrative with and certainly would love to knock them out after the whole Mihailo Mudryk saga as well. If it was me, I want Sporting Lisbon. I think they're the most beatable opponent of all the teams that we could face in that next round. Juventus, of course, are probably the biggest challenge along with Manchester United, but it would be nice to play Juventus and knock them out of the competition if that is indeed to be our opponent. Now, moving into transfers, and Evan Ndika, who was linked to Arsenal in January, with some suggestions in Italy saying that Arsenal had even agreed a deal to sign him on a free, which obviously has turned out not to be the case, with Arsenal signing Jakub Kiwior to be their future left-sided centre-back. He is most likely now to join Barcelona on a free in the summer. A number of teams are said to be interested in the French defender from Frankfurt, but Barcelona are the team now leading the race, but Arsenal not expected to go back in after they signed Kiwior in January. Arsenal did reportedly table a bid for Raphinha in January, totaling around 70 million euros. As we know that Arsenal ended up going to sign Leandro Trossard in the end, but Raphinha, really interesting that we did supposedly, if you remember when we missed out on Mudryk, the immediate kind of reaction to that, there was a lot of reports suggesting that Arsenal were going to therefore try and see if Barcelona and Deco, the agent of Raphinha, would be open to making a deal happen. That wasn't the case. Raphinha was said to be very happy at Barcelona, but we've had confirmation supposedly that Raphinha did indeed, was subject to the bid. That came from Alfred Martinez, who is a Spanish journalist working out there on Onda Cero Radio, Premier Nacional over in Spain. So if you need to know where that came from, that's where it came from, in Barcelona. So he's a Barcelona-based journalist. So I would have no reason to think that that's not the case. Now, Folarin Balogun is continuing to draw interest from a number of teams, both abroad and in the Premier League. Now, it says that specifically there are a number of Premier League clubs that are like just below the top six. Jonathan Johnson, a fantastically named journalist from CBS, has said that with the Premier League clubs looking at Balogun at the moment, my understanding is it's clubs just outside of the top six, but those are the clubs that are trying to break in to the top six. So I imagine the likes of Brighton, Aston Villa, I suppose Fulham are now up there trying to break into the top six. If you're calling it the big six, then you'd imagine that Newcastle would be in there, but they've already got Isaac and Callum Wilson. You'd also probably put the likes of Brentford into that category as well, and perhaps even Crystal Palace and maybe Leicester, although some of those teams have had a trickier time. Now, it's said that Arsenal and Arteta will want to see what Balogun's like when he returns to the club in the summer and to see how he gets on. But Balogun's future remains very much up in the air. He has, I think, 2 to 3 years left on his deal come the summer. And Arsenal will, of course, need to make a decision on that because they're expected to probably get a significant number of bids for the striker when that summer transfer window rolls around. Now, the big news and the most exciting news that we need to discuss today is that, as first reported yesterday by Sami Mokbel of the Mail and then confirmed by a number of outlets, including Football London and Kaya and David Ornstein, as well as The Athletic, that Arsenal have indeed reached an agreement in principle for Bukayo Saka to become the next signee of a brand new contract with Arsenal. Massive, massive news for Saka. The expectation is that he will earn around £10 million a year. So you're looking at around the £200,000 per week figure. That is a figure that includes bonuses, incentives, etc. amazing news for Arsenal. It's so funny because I remember talking about this, not only just yesterday, we were talking about Bukayo Saka's contract situation, but we were talking about this in the January window. A lot of people were confused and a bit frustrated as to why on earth Arsenal weren't kind of getting this deal done quick enough, or why it was dragging on, and they were starting to get worried about it. And I think that you will know that we've remained pretty composed here, talking about both Martinelli before that one got done, Saka before this one eventually gets done, and of course the next one is Saliba. There's also suggestions that Xhaka and Ramsdale are next on the list to also get signed up to brand new contracts too. But it's fantastic news that we've all been waiting for and all been hoping that we would see happen. But Bukayo Saka is indeed set to sign a brand new contract with Arsenal, it is said, fighting off any interest from the likes of Liverpool, Manchester City that may have been circling a potential opportunity to sign him on a free next summer, not this one coming, but next summer, when he had a year left on his deal. But he has always wanted to stay at Arsenal, it is understood. He's never wanted to move anywhere else, and he's certainly convinced by the project and the process that Mikel Arteta has indeed instilled and implemented at the club. Now, if you want to get your hands on something that Bukayo Saka himself has etched his name onto, football prizes are indeed continuing with their competition for the next few days, in which you can win a signed and framed Bukayo Saka Arsenal shirt. Not only that, but within the frame, it contains a little small television screen that plays highlights of some of his best moments so far in an Arsenal shirt, which, I mean, is pretty crazy in itself. Now, if you enter the competition, of which I am confirming now there is around 87 tickets remaining of the 300 that went on sale, link in the description to get involved. You can also potentially win a signed and framed Thomas Partey shirt, a Tomiyasu signed and framed Arsenal boot, a signed David Seaman signed Arsenal mount, which like picture frame of the photos of his career, and he signed it, and a number of football prizes site credit as well to get involved with future competitions. So a great opportunity to get a shirt of the player that we've obviously just been discussing, and a great piece of memorabilia to hold on your wall or hang somewhere in your house. Certainly worth getting. Okay, let's go to part 2 and your questions right after this. Okay, let's go to part 2 and your questions. Penny Wayne says, if Saka is going to get paid a lot more than Martinelli, could that make Martinelli disillusioned and feel not as important? I mean, the likelihood is that Saka is going to be paid more than Martinelli. Martinelli's still on a very decent wage. I think the estimation is around £180,000 per week. Saka's closer to 200,000. In short, I don't think so. I think there's an understanding of the hierarchy at the club anyway. I think that Saka is obviously appreciated as Arsenal's kind of star figure, homegrown, come through the academy, now starting week in, week out for the club. We're not even signing players that are looking like they might even give him rotation, whereas you've got Trossard, who's obviously giving rotation to Martinelli. There's an understanding of the place of Saka in this group. I have seen some suggestions that have said that Saka could become Arsenal's highest paid player. I'm not sure that that's accurate. I'm pretty sure that Gabriel Jesus will, at least for the moment, remain Arsenal's highest paid player. So I'm not sure that is. I'm not sure that is going to happen. But what I would say is that I don't think we've got any issues at the moment about the structure of wages. Of course, we're in a position where William Saliba is going to be able to ask for a lot of money because we're now offering out decent money. But we also have signed Fabio Vieira to a very good amount of money when we signed him in the summer. Gabriel Magalhaes' contract is not said to be too lucrative either. Arsenal have managed to keep a lot of their assets on a reasonable amount of money. Let's go to Keithan says, what time's the Europa League draw? Midday, I believe, UK time. Midday is when it should be happening. Sally Baba says, hey, Tom, are we getting Højlund, who is a player that I don't honestly know too much about? He currently plays, he's a Danish international football playing for Atalanta in Serie A. I don't know much about him. I have seen these links to Arsenal, but I've also seen suggestions that Arsenal aren't a side that are currently looking to sign him. Played 19 games in Serie A this season, 6 goals, 2 assists. Has also played in, I don't know where his previous club was. It was Sturm Graz in the Austrian Bundesliga, but he's done very well. He's an exciting player, just 20 years of age, can play centre forward, can play in a wide position, but mainly as a centre forward. I don't think Arsenal are looking at him seriously. I might be wrong, but I've not personally heard anything to suggest that we're moving for him in the coming summer transfer window. That might change if we move some players on, and that interest may turn into something more concrete, but I've personally not heard anything about Højlund from Atalanta. Mad G says, if you could spend a day with any former Arsenal player, who would it be? Probably Mikel Arteta. Because if I spent the day with Mikel Arteta, who is a former Arsenal player, I'd probably have quite good access to the squad map. So I think it's probably got to be Mikel Arteta, does it not? It's either that or someone who just does crazy things. Nicholas Bentner. Maybe someone like that. 8MM Spike says, do you want to see us face Man United in the Europa League? I think it would be fun to match up with them again. Not really. Not particularly, because obviously that means one of us goes out, and I don't mind the further Man United go in the competition. It means they've got more fixtures. I was actually quite happy to see them stay in the competition, and also to see Barcelona now face financial chaos from going out just after the group stage of the Champions League, which they obviously knocked down into the Europa League. Madness that they actually got put in that position. Yes, I think I'd rather see us come up against a much simpler opponent that we can play some of our maybe more rotational figures against. Sporting Lisbon being, I think, one of those, Sevilla being another one of those who have had a really poor season in La Liga. So, yeah, I think there are options for us. Marcus says, in order, who would be your top 5 highest earners at Arsenal? In terms of who I think accurately are our top 5 earners, right now, so at the moment, right now, Saka hasn't actually signed his new contract, so I can't include him. But at the moment, I believe that Jesus is our highest paid player at around £220,000 per week. I think that Thomas Partey is our next highest earner, around £200,000 per week. Martinelli, I think, will come in. I think his new wage is around £180,000 per week. I think Alexander Zinchenko is on around 150-ish thousand. How many is that? Is that 4? So I think the next highest, and again, I don't think it's Saka yet until he signs his new deal, but I think the next on that list would probably be, I'm going to say, Ben White. I mean, Nicolas Pepe, when he returns, might also be up there, but I think Ben White might be the next highest on the list as well. So yeah, I think it's Jesus, Partey, Martinelli, Zinchenko, Ben White. I think there are 5 highest earners at the club. That's probably the right list. Let's go to Aaron, who says, do you think it would be foolish to sell Tierney in the summer with Champions League football around the corner? He's still got 3 years left on his deal, and with players that we have to sell, we surely don't need that money. It depends on the player, Aaron, and it depends obviously what you react to if we do move him on. If you do sell Kieran Tierney, it's likely that we probably bring in a left back. I know Tavares is coming back, but I think he probably moves on in the summer as well. Maybe even Marseille want to sign him on a permanent deal. But I think that, yeah, it's much more likely that we see Tierney move on and sold for a decent figure, a very good figure, in fact, and we bring somebody else in that position that's just more stylistically what Arteta wants from that role. I don't necessarily want to see him go, because I think there is a role for him in the team, and he's obviously a very good player, and I don't particularly want to see him playing for some one of our rivals in the Premier League, and he probably would move to the Premier League still and stay within the league. Yeah, it's a tricky one, that one. But with the Champions League, we just need to make sure that we've got a squad with competitive options throughout it. That doesn't mean 24 players that are all good enough to start. I think you've got to have a group of about 20. A group of about 20 players, 18 to 20 players that are all starting level quality is what you should aim for, with 5 to 7 players that are, youth players coming through or more experienced utility players at the club. I think that's probably a good dynamic of the group. Let's go to loopholes. What are you talking about? What loophole did I come up with? Did I come up with a loophole in the chat? Apparently, I can't even remember. See, I forget things as soon as I've said them these days. Jason says, Xhaka looks a bit burnt out. If fit, would you play Partey and Jorginho tomorrow? There's no expectation that Partey will be fit. He's not been involved in training as far as I'm aware. He might be involved today, but he's not been involved in training as far as I know. Xhaka does look burnt out. I'd probably use Vieira. If you are going to use somebody else at the moment, it would be Vieira and Jorginho playing in midfield. gives Xhaka a bit of a rest. Alternatively, you could play Tierney and move Zinchenko into midfield. You could also use Smith Rowe, but I think he needs to be eased back and given some minutes first. So Vieira starts, then maybe you bring Smith Rowe on later in the game. Let's go to scrolling down the chat box. Jack says, as a fellow Scot, I'd hate to see Tierney leave. However, he'll want to be playing week in, week out, as he's crucial for the national team. Absolutely. He's not going to want to be in a position whereby he's without minutes. Because if he is without minutes, he's going to get frustrated. Admittedly, why wouldn't you be frustrated in the team that you're currently in right now if you're not getting regular game time? And Tierney, throughout his entire career, pretty much, of course, has played for a team where he's starting pretty much every single game. So very, very difficult to see him staying right now. But what I would say is that while we've got him, we've got a very, very good player indeed. Let's scroll down the chat box a bit more. Let's go to, the Arteta loophole. I see, yes, choosing Arteta gives you good access to the club. It's worth it. Sometimes you've got to think smarter, not harder. It's as simple as that. Benji says, Tom, I know we have history to settle with Shakhtar, but I personally wouldn't want the team having to fly to Ukraine or Poland in the middle of the situation and the title race. I think they're currently playing in Poland right now. I don't think they're playing in Ukraine. I might be wrong about that. We'll have a chat with Andrew Todos if indeed we do get lined up against Shakhtar to find out a bit more about them. But I'm pretty sure they're not playing in Ukraine, and it would be in Poland. We'll have to wait and see what happens and who we get, but we'll find that out today, and then we can go from there in terms of deciding what we're going to do. Let's go to Aditya says, hi Tom, how many minutes for Tierney and what is the scenario for Rob Holding? Holding continues to be part of the squad. Arteta really likes the player. He's an integral part of the group and comes into the team when we need him in defensive situations. But it's probably likely that he will move on in the summer. I think he'll look to try and get more regular game time as he reaches his peak years. So you can certainly see him moving off maybe to, I don't know, a Newcastle or a Leicester or somewhere like that. I could see Rob Holding maybe moving somewhere in the future. Tierney, how many minutes is he going to get between now and the end of the season? I'd imagine that he would be playing in the Europa League games. I'd be surprised if he wasn't. But outside of that, I don't see Zinchenko being dropped at all, unless he obviously faces any kind of injury, which he has had history with so far this season. Let's go to yesteryear says 3 a.m. in Atlanta, first live. Thank you so much for joining me, mate. Make sure you don't stay up too long, and make sure you get a serious amount of sleep. I always say that to our listeners. LJ says we can't draw Man United. Is it true? Can Arsenal play Man United in the Europa League? I didn't know that was the case. Here we go. So last 16, Arsenal. That's fine. Where's the rule at? How does it work? The only restriction involves national associations. So no two sides from the same territory can be drawn against each other at this stage. That means Manchester United cannot be drawn against Premier League leaders Arsenal. There you go. So we can't play them until the quarterfinals. So yes, we won't be playing them until later on in the competition. Well spotted. Fuad says, how many players do you see getting sold in the summer? And do you think this is the year that we can judge Edu on his selling skills, as we now have the players without? Yes, we've said that for some time, haven't we? We've said that Edu will be judged on sales a lot this summer because there is such a wealth of assets that we've got to try and move on. So that's what we've got to hope to see happen. So fingers crossed, we see the likes of Tavares, Pepe, Maitland-Niles, all these players I think are going to be looked to move on in the summer. Tierney, we might see him move on. Balogun might yet be sold. It's a great opportunity. Yes, Omar, I am a massive fraud. You should know this by now. Machego says, I want Juventus in my opinion. Big clash. I'd quite like to see Man United draw Juventus, to be honest. I think that's probably the best outcome for us, is if Man United draw Juventus. We just got to hope that transpires. Faz says, much better now that we are beginning to sign players rather than let them run down their contracts. With the wealth entering the Premier League, how can we continue to retain talent and compete on wages? Eventually, it's just by steadily improving your wage structure, Faz. That's how it works. Like at the moment, we're on around the £200,000 £100,000 per week maximum, whereas clubs like City are on £300,000 plus, so Chelsea, so are Man United. And the more that we improve, the more we keep our best players, the more we renew contracts of Saka and Jesus and Martinelli and Ben White and Zinchenko, you'll start to see players move up to those high figures as well, because that's what big teams at the top of the table do, because they've got the money to be able to do that and the Champions League backing to be able to do that. So that's what you're probably going to see. I'm very excited for the summer. I think Arsenal have got a very, very good amount of money to spend, especially considering how much we bid for Mudryk and Caicedo in January and didn't get those players. So there's still significant funds available for the summer to spend on targets, and with the potential of not only Champions League football, but also with Premier League winning money, if that happens, or just second place, you get good money for either. That's going to help, hopefully, boost us into a really good position for next season. So who knows? Retain the title. Pinyween says cap news. Yes, indeed, cap news. We're just waiting on the website to kind of be built, and once that's sorted, and once we've got things in place, we will indeed be doing our non-profit cap sales merchandise for the channel. So if you've not heard about this, not these caps, but certainly some TGT ones, which I don't have around me at the moment, but non-profit merchandise, half of it goes to the Arsenal Foundation, half of it will be going to Cancer Macmillan Support. So if you want to get involved, I'll let you know when we've got the details. Anyway, Mikel Arteta's press conference is 9:30 this morning, which means that I've got to jump off now to go and run the blog over at football.london. So I'll be hearing from Mikel in just over an hour's time. We'll then, of course, be following all the updates ahead of the draw in the Europa League as well. Be interesting to see who we get. My fingers crossed, are for Sporting, and I'm hoping Man United get Juventus. That would be great. Of course, they can't play them, because they were both, that's so disappointing. So this is what I mean when I put together that graphic of the Europa League, because it's the one that the Europa League Twitter account used. It's just all scattergun. So I suppose the hardest team that Man United can face are they can't play Real Sociedad, can they? Because they're in the same group as them. So I don't think they can play unless they get them again. But I think the hardest team they can play is like Betis, maybe, or Freiburg. Freiburg are pretty decent. That sucks. Oh, well. Thanks for pointing that out, Mohammed. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I need to practice who they can and can't draw. Absolute nice. Fraud Watch. I am on Fraud Watch this morning. Hugh Wizzy's going to find me. So there you go. Yeah, the blog is on football.london, so you can make sure you follow everything over there. So there you go. Final thing before we wrap up today's show, I just wanted to highlight the fact that John Motson, famous, integral, legendary BBC sport commentator, sadly passed away yesterday, and certainly commentated on a number of massive moments for Arsenal through history. The one that really sticks in my mind is the commentary of Thierry Henry's return to the Emirates after such a long period of time away from the club. He came back, played in that FA Cup game against Leeds and scored. He commentated on that game. Plenty of amazing moments of commentary from John Motson, and he will be very sadly missed. His final game, actually, I believe, was Arsenal against Watford that he commentated on before he retired. So Arsenal has very much been strewn throughout his time in the business, but certainly someone that I know a lot of people, I'm sure Harry Symeou in particular, as a fellow commentator of John's, now making his way in that area of the field. Amazing work by Harry. I'm sure he's been inspired by people like John Motson. So R.I.P. Motti, and a massive thank you for everything that he contributed to the sport. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Appreciate your time. I'll see you tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., of course. I don't think I'm doing a show this... Oh, no, I am. Yes, we're doing a preview show today at 6 o'clock. So do tune in 6 p.m. UK time today for our preview of Leicester City. I'll be doing that with the members. Nearly forgot that. It's been a mad morning, crazy morning. I need some tea. I'm going to go get some caffeine in my body, and then maybe I can work out how the Europa League actually works. Thank you for listening. I'll see you again very soon. Drop a like on the video, subscribe if you're new, and as always, up the Arsenal.